Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another of these new WoW World sets. We've got quite the interesting one again today. However, what's really interesting is we actually have the same T-Rex back again in this set, but with a different coloration. Very Schleich-like, actually, as far as the colors go of that one. I can clearly see where they got the inspiration from for that paintwork. But obviously, we've got a few different species included in this one, as well as we also have a Spinosaurus, a Triceratops, and a Stegosaurus. The packaging, although, again, I like the colors and can appreciate the colors of it, is still pretty ugly because we again have this stupid AI dinosaur over here. We'll have another stupid AI pterosaur as we turn it around. But when we turn it around to the actual back, you can see we actually have different figures that are displayed on here compared to the last set. We've got some of the battle damage dinos that I have reviewed here on the channel in the past. I don't remember if I've reviewed the Dilophosaurus, actually, now that I think about it. I'll have to go back and look. For some reason, if I did, I don't really remember it. But there is also this larger Dilophosaurus, which I do definitely have, and I'm pretty sure I've reviewed, as well as the Velociraptor over here. The light and sound version, which I have definitely reviewed that one on the channel. There's also an RC T-Rex, this really silly train thing. And then, of course, a truck with a Schleich T-Rex over here. But let's go ahead and pop this set open and we'll check these out. So there is everything from inside this set. You can see we've got some pretty cool stuff here. And of course, we also have the classic battle of a T-Rex and Triceratops, which is definitely fun. But overall, again, the figures look pretty decent when it comes to the sculpts and everything. But as I've already mentioned before, we have already reviewed all of these when it comes to the sculpts. The T-Rex, the Triceratops, the Stego, the Spino, all of this stuff was included in previous stuff that I've reviewed on the channel. The T-Rex, of course, I actually just reviewed again in the last WoW World set, but the Stego, Spino, and Triceratops are actually part of the set that had like a dinosaur cage, and there were like small versions of these guys in it, and then they were also included in the articulated figures, although the Spino I don't think had an articulated one. I could be wrong, but for some reason I'm thinking it may not have. But either way, these figures have been out for a little while now, and they've been included in quite a few different sets. I am, regardless, still very excited to take a look at them. So I'm going to go ahead, move the majority of these guys out of the way, and then bring in our T-Rex first. Now I have, again, reviewed the sculpt in the past, so we definitely don't need to do that again with this one. Just look at what's different on this one compared to previous versions, and that is the color, which apparently they borrowed from Schleich, because this absolutely looks like the Schleich T-Rex when it comes to both the tones of color and the style of paintwork, especially when it comes to this light sort of tan tone that moves over and around the eye area. That's very Schleich-like. You do also have a darker green there around the eye, a yellow eye with a black pupil, sort of sloppy paintwork in that area. We can see the teeth are horribly painted as per usual, a little variation to the greens, as well as a dark wash that has been applied, which looks alright. We are supposed to have an articulated jaw, but it doesn't work very well. Nice pinkish tone for the tongue on the inside of the mouth, but very sloppy paintwork. As you can see, the green that they obviously airbrushed on has actually run onto the tongue on the inside of the mouth as well. So pretty sloppy paintwork, but at least there's a little bit of a satin shine. They really need to work on the way that they paint these teeth, though, because they are so bad. And it's always like that from WoW World. They just do not care when it comes to the paintwork of the teeth of their figures. Same deal for the eyes. Like, look at how bad the paintwork is for that eye right there. Again, these figures would be pretty fun to get just to repaint and practice painting on, or even if you're good at painting. Again, they really do sport the type of detail that you could have an impressive painted figure when you're done. But as you move down, again, you've got a mixture of light greens and darker greens, the darker green following along the back and also striping down. The darker green also overtakes the arm, and as you move down, you have a little bit of like a tan moving into the fingers and the hand of the T-Rex. We have very sloppily painted claws with a glossy black, but like they do at least have a genuine sharp look to them, kind of. If you look at this, if I could just get a good angle of those claws, as you can see, again, they do look fairly sharp. They actually are kind of sharp, but they're a little flexible. But the paintwork is just so sloppy and so bad. Just like with the other one, arm articulation forward and back. As we continue to move down, you can see they actually applied like some brownish tones in a few areas as well, just to add a little extra paintwork. The figures, like when it comes to the bodies, I always feel like the paintwork isn't half bad. It's the small details that they just cannot do a good job on, like the teeth, the eyes, and the claws are always the worst areas of WoW World. And you could see that again when we move down into the feet of this T-Rex, like the paintwork of the claws, it's so bad. But as you move down again, you've got some of the brownish tones, you have some of the greens, lighter and darker shades, and we again transition to like a tan, moving down into the foot. Leg articulation, just like we had with the last version of the T-Rex, and then you do have a swivel tail here for the Tyrannosaurus as well, which I kind of feel like we didn't on the other one, which is really weird, unless the other one was kind of jammed, but the tail is definitely swiveling on this one. But as you move out, again, you've got like the brown here for the underside, that light brown, and then the variations of greens, as well as the dark wash moving along the rest of the figure. And again, it's nice to not see screw holes when I turn it around, but not the greatest T-Rex in the world, that's for sure, but still kind of fun. The Stegosaurus, I actually think is a fairly decent looking version. The sculpt and everything looks quite nice. Sadly, there is a seam moving down the center of this one. We didn't see that on the Dilophosaurus or anything in the last set, so I was hoping that this set wasn't going to have any seams like that either, but unfortunately, that is not the case. The Stego does have it, but the paintwork is okay. This one looks actually kind of familiar when it comes to the paintwork. I don't know if I had one previously in this paint job or what, or if I've just seen it somewhere, but the paint job looks very familiar. But we have greenish tones throughout the body, a little bit of like a light yellow in the stomach region. You've got some orangish tones for the plates, and they do have a bit of a shine, which you can see, which is a bit different from the rest of the body. So I do like the fact that they kind of like elaborated the plates up there with that shine. But the skin detail and everything on this, again, is actually really well done. They really need to get these figures out with better painters because they could look pretty darn nice. You do have a black for the beak, a bit of a glossy black. You have a darker green around the eye, and then a yellow and a black pupil. And then you do also have a light yellowish tone that moves down along the underside. As you move out into the thagomizers, you can see those are just the orange tone that we have there for the plates and everything. They basically ran that orange tone over the top of the tail. So it's not super impressive, but it's still a fairly fun Stegosaurus. I actually think, like, again, detail-wise, it's really nicely done and really does deserve a better paint job, but you can see, of course, the nails did not get painted, sadly. But again, a figure I've reviewed, just a fairly decent looking repaint. Same deal with the Spino. Again, we have reviewed this guy in the past, but this one has kind of like a swimming look to it, but at the same time it stands fairly nicely, which is a plus. Very bright colors on this one. I feel like the head sculpt always looks a little silly on it, but it's not the end of the world. You have an orange there for the tip of the snout, and then a dark green as you move back into the body. We also have kind of like a light blue there in the eye with a black pupil. I don't think that blue is meant to be the full paintwork of the eye, and if it is, boy, they put way too much into that. But then you pick up a weird metallic blue that stripes down and actually leads back into the stomach, but ends before you lead into the leg. You have an orangish tone moving along the back, and then a few variations of greens with a lighter yellowish sort of a tone for the underside of the figure moving along. And then moving up into the sail, you do have an orange that highlights the top of the sail with a light yellow in the center, and then a darker green as you move down. We can also see the yellowish sort of a tone that overtakes the feet and hands of the Spinosaurus as well. And again, no painted nails on this one either. It's sad because the last set had more painted claws than this one seems to. But as you move out into that paddle-like tail, you can see, again, the detail does still look very crisp. The paintwork looking decent with some variations of greens and oranges and yellows and stuff as you lead out, but nothing overly crazy impressive when it comes to the paintwork of this one. And I feel like that metallic blue stripe is so out of place and so awkward looking on the figure. We do also have the mouth open on this Spino, and you can see the teeth again. If you were more precise, could look a lot nicer because the paintwork that they've given it looks pretty terrible. But the teeth in general don't really seem to like have a very highly detailed look. The teeth in the lower jaw look a little bit better, but the teeth in the upper jaw seem to kind of all be like blended together. Maybe it's just because they have too much paintwork on it. I don't know. It's too hard to really tell. But again, fairly fun-looking Spinosaurus. I actually think it's a pretty cool-looking figure. And again, I've had that one in the past. The one I think I'm most impressed with is this Triceratops, because for some reason, although it does seem to have a little bit of a hollow feel, it also feels kind of heavy for what I was expecting and a little bit higher quality. And again, I think the Triceratops figures that I've had before with this sculpt were a bit smaller, so it's nice to see this one in a larger size to get a better appreciation for how good the detail is. This one primarily has a grayish tone, and then we have like a dark purple that kind of moves through the face. You see a yellowish tone for the beak. Unfortunately, they didn't paint the lower part of the beak, which is sad. And then rather than actually painting the tongue nicely, first of all, they have some of the paintwork of the beak slopped in there. Man, my camera doesn't want to focus. But you also see a dark reddish tone, similar to what we have up here, that they just gave it like a once-over on the tongue to, and that was it, and then they moved on. We do have an orange eye with a black pupil, and that might be the nicest, although still sloppy, but the nicest painted eye that I've seen on any of these figures so far. They also neglected to paint the nasal horn here of our Triceratops, which is unfortunate. But as you move up, you have a yellow for the horns and everything up here, and I don't think it's all that nicely applied, and still looks a little bit weird. They could have chosen a much better color than a yellow. We also have, again, the yellow that kind of moves around the outer edge of the frill when it comes to those spikes as well. We also have that kind of maroon tone that runs around the outer edge of the frill, sort of. Kind of goes off course in a few areas, and then stripes back in. Kind of similar, I think, coloration to what we had on the Schleich Triceratops a few years back. But overall, again, I think it looks all right. Definitely not very good, precise paintwork, but a decent color scheme they've chosen, and I think the sculpt itself looks pretty nice. As we move back, unfortunately, we do have a big seam moving through the figure, and that's something that these figures often have, which is unfortunate. If you do purchase these guys to repaint or whatever, I definitely recommend sealing up those seams, because I feel like it could make a massive difference in the overall final product. You've got some okay detail on the back of the frill as well, actually, that I never really had a chance to look at, because the one that I had prior to this of this Triceratops was a good bit smaller. But as we move down through the course of the body, you basically have those maroon tones return and then stripe down along the top of the figure. They are a little off course, it seems. And there's also like a light dry brushing of like a pinkish tone that's been applied to the top of the figure moving along. You have a few areas of like some darker airbrushing that's been applied just to add a little variation of color, and then the standard light gray of the primary body. No real differences here on the underside, unfortunately, but there is a dark wash that has been applied, which looks fairly decent down here, but you don't see it so much on the side, which is sad because I feel like I could have amped up the detail a bit nicer. But look at how terrible of a job they did when it comes to painting the nails. Like, what factory looks at this and they think, well, that looks passable, let's move it on? Like, this foot basically has no paintwork besides the tips at all. They slopped it up here on the leg. This one's closer. That's still not great, and this one is also awful. So I don't know. Definitely they did a terrible job when it comes to painting the nails on this one. But as you move back, again, you see pretty much the same thing on this side as what we had seen on the first side when it comes to the paintwork of this. So not the greatest paint job, but still a pretty fun-looking Triceratops. So again, I don't think there's really much more that we need to do for this set. I guess we could technically do a comparison. We're not going to measure all of them or anything like that, but we'll just do our standard comparison. As we have Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being here next to our set from WoW World, and you can see again, pretty much the same as far as sizes go compared to what we had with the previous WoW World set. You can see again, you've got a articulated T-Rex, you've got a larger figure with this time being the Triceratops as opposed to the Brachiosaurus in the last set, and then you've got two smaller ones, which in the other set was a Dilophosaurus and Velociraptor. This time around we have a Stego and a Spinosaurus, so pretty fun, but the sizes are honestly all over the place in this set. So again, this is another decent set from WoW World, and I am happy to see that they are incorporating new figures finally in their line, and, you know, some of these more high quality, higher detailed figures, I guess we'll put it that way, in their line. You know, the old ones are pretty used and abused at this point, like the T-Rex that we have in this set. They've released it so many times, there's just like, how many variants do you really want to own of the WoW World T-Rex? This one looks okay, even though they clearly stole the color scheme from Schleich. But the other figures in this set, in my opinion, are more so the highlight in this set. The Stego, the Spino, and the Triceratops are pretty cool. And again, even though they are figures that are available from a few different companies, they are still pretty highly detailed. And the actual WoW World versions here really do sport some impressive fine detail on them as a whole. So that's a plus. The paint apps of all of these figures, none of them really have great paint apps, but they're okay in certain areas, horribly sloppy in others, but they're still fun for what they are. As I said, if you don't want to keep the set, like this, you can purchase these to repaint because they are very highly detailed and they'd be great figures to practice painting on. Or even if you are like a seasoned veteran when it comes to painting, they're just so nicely detailed. I would like to see more high quality paint jobs on these guys from some other people. I just feel like they really do sport the type of detail that warrant a better paint job. But if you are interested in these, you can again pick them up from TJ Maxx for about $12.99. So check your local TJ Maxx, grab them if you want them, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.